Hello and welcome to the CODESYS Feature Briefing in March 2023. My name is Hilmar Panzer. Thanks for spending your time and your interest in this event. Well, what is the motivation and content of this event? We want to update you and give you information on important activities in the CODESYS group, especially present you new features and improvements that we have recently completed or plan to complete it soon. Part of it is also some news about the life cycle changes of our products. And of course, we will keep you informed about architectural modifications. The mode of this event is it takes place twice a year. So now in March and the next will be in October. And we are doing it now for the third time. So we want to continuously run this event. The meeting will be recorded and published. It consists mainly of a presentation part and follows quite precisely an agenda because we have recorded the single presentations. And you can place your questions during the presentation on the GoToWebinar question window here. It's like a chat. See this small screenshot. But please don't forget to give us the content of your question, pointing to the presentation and the slides so that we later understand what is the context. After the presentation part, we will have a question and answer part. So we will collect your questions that you are giving us now and either answer them directly or in the question and answer part later on. And in case we cannot answer the question today, we will contact you later. Now and then, we will also ask you some questions about the presentation. So we'll do some polls. And the results of these polls, we are going to present you as well. So between the presentation and the question and answer part. Now, having a look on the agenda, you're currently hearing the general introduction. Afterwards, my presentation about the CODESYS development system will take place. Then my colleague Markus Haberstock will give you some update about the help portal and the documentation in general. Bernhard Reiter will take over for the professional developer edition. Then Andreas Kehrer for the CODESYS Runtime system, so the CODESYS control. Tanja Hafenmeier for the licensing. And then again, Andreas Kehrer giving some interesting news about CODESYS Safety. Myself about CODESYS SoftMotion afterwards. And then there's a block of Bernhard Reiter giving updates about application, communication, and Fieldbus products. Martin Decker will update you about the CODESYS automation server. And last but not least, Andreas Kehrer about the CODESYS Visualization. Some words about the upcoming releases. Maybe you know that we are currently in the release phase of version 3.5, Service Pack 19. We plan to release it next week. Following our yearly Service Pack release cycle, always in spring, we try to provide you with a new Service Pack version. Apart from these Service Packs, we do regular patches, scheduled more or less on a monthly base. And since we have done the modularization of CODESYS, we have several add-on products with their own release cycle, and we have several releases of these products every month. There's some news about this, so we are publishing our schedule for releasing these add-ons now on our homepage. Here's the link, and what you can find there looks similar to this. You'll have the product name and the version, also some additional information for this version, and the time or date when we plan to release it. If we don't know it more precisely, you will see that there's for example, just a second quarter of 2023 here for the code generator ARM as an example. So we also try to inform you about the reliability and the precision of this schedule. Okay, so far for my introduction. Then just one word about the technical things about GoToWebinar. We are now and then, some participants are facing problems regarding the audio. When we switch to the videos, as I will do right now, then sometimes you don't hear, or people are reporting that they don't hear the sound. And this is often because there's the audio signal is somehow switched inside Windows, and then I'd ask you to check the Windows configuration if the audio device is set correctly. Okay, let's start with my first presentation about the CODESYS development system. See you later.
About the CODESYS programming system. Windows 8.1 has been discontinued by Microsoft. Accordingly, CODESYS will also discontinue its official support for it starting now with Service Pack 19. In practice, CODESYS will continue to run on Windows 8.1, but there's no guarantee, and we recommend updating to a version supported by Microsoft. This is necessary and recommended for security reasons alone. I already announced the package designer at the last feature briefing. At the end of last year, we were able to release it. First of all, once again, for all those who have not yet intentionally come into contact with CODESYS packages. CODESYS packages can contain libraries, device descriptions, visualization elements, or other artifacts, and we ourselves use Microsoft as a delivery form and container for all our add-ons. Device vendors also use packages to provide the necessary files to support their target system. And they are also very common among library developers, for example, to package and deliver a set of versioned libraries. We've also had a package designer in the past that you could use to put these packages together. But because of modularization and other architectural changes, it was no longer usable and we had to re-implement it. We finished that at the end of last year and you can now find it on our store. The CODESYS installer kept us busy a lot last year. We fixed many bugs and made some improvements which we shipped in several versions, the last one just a few days ago. I would like to introduce the most important improvements now. We now log installation events in the Windows Event Viewer. Under Windows Protocols, sorry for the German version, but I only have the German version available, but I'm sure you'll find it easily in the English version too. Under Windows Protocols, Application, and here if you sort for source columns, then you will see that there are entries under AP installer, and this helps in tracing problems. You can analyze time and date and see what has been done. Then we added localization for English and German. The other CODESYS supported languages are coming soon. Another important thing is that the installer asks for administrator rights only when it is really necessary. That means when you change an installation. Before, it used to ask every time it was started. If you open the installer to choose and start the right CODESYS version in case of multiple installations, then you don't need administrator rights anymore. This was also important for the next feature. When double-clicking on a project or opening a project from the Explorer, the last installed CODESYS version no longer opens as before, but from now on the installer, which analyzes the project and automatically searches for the appropriate version and opens it. Please note that this is unfortunately only working from Service Pack 18 patch 5. and of course Service Pack 19 and newer versions. But if you install an old version later, then the setup of the old version overrides the assignment from project to installer. Since we cannot change the behavior of old setup, this problem must be solved over time. Yeah, this is also accompanied by some improvements to the project inspection. The project inspection is responsible for analyzing a project and looking at which version it was created with. There were, besides strong speeding up of the process, the improvements that you no longer need the internet for this analysis. And there's also a compare view that shows the differences between the current version and the version used for storing the project. However, the improvements only take effect with projects saved from Service Pack 19 on. We have also improved the wizard that appears when you open a project where the version does not match 100%. We have made an effort here to make this wizard more user-friendly and use case related. We now ask which project phase you are in and distinguish whether you are in the development phase, in which an update of the programming environment might be acceptable or even desired, or whether you are in the operating phase, in which you generally want to avoid updates of the programming system, e.g. because the machine or plant has already been tested and accepted, or because you do not want to risk the online change functionality. Now let's have an outlook what we are planning next for the installer. Indeed, we now deliver a number of new versions for our add-ons each month, and we recommend that you immediately update and use them. On the other hand, we are aware that you may be in the situation where applications have been approved, the machine or plant has been delivered, and you can only make minimal changes and do not want to run the risk of introducing an unwanted change in behavior through a version update. Sure, each update of an add-on can potentially modify the application code. In practice, however, there are add-ons that do not make any changes to the delivered code. So these could therefore be updated without worries. And we want to make this transparent in the future and mark these add-ons accordingly. Yes, and on the other hand, there is the aspect of security. You probably know that we ourselves and so-called researchers regularly check the code of CODESYS, including the used open source code, for security vulnerabilities. We inform you regularly about this, and if something is found and fixed there's a need for action on your side, at least in security relevant environment. That's why we will mark security fixes separately in the installer. So you will get a clear overview through the installer. First, which update may change your code, and second, which update contains security fixes. On this basis, you can then decide whether to update or not. In general, we have more improvements planned with the installer. The quality initiative we started last year is still running. We will continue to release new versions frequently. Another new feature will be the user survey. We are developing a small add-on that will ask the user every now and then, not too frequently of course, a maximum of 3 questions about the user's behavior, preferences, or ratings. And of course, we will ask the user in advance if he is willing to participate, and he can also turn this functionality off completely. But your feedback is very important for us, and that's why I would like to draw your attention to this new feature today and ask you to participate in it as soon as it is available. The information and the answers you give us here are very important for us and help us to make our product better for you. With Service Pack 19 also come improvements for the License Manager. The License Manager is the tool that allows you to install additional licenses. So licenses of additional features. Here, for example, we have the IIoT libraries. Licenses are usually purchased in the CODESYS store and then can be installed via the license manager in so-called containers, either directly on the controller, in this case we call them soft container, or alternatively on the CODESYS USB key. Up to now, it has not been possible to see exactly in which container which license is located. Here on the left side, you see the old dialog, and here the new one, which is now structured according to available containers. It could also be several soft containers because there exist different versions. And moreover, some licenses make demands on the container version. The new dialog also helps to find the right container and makes fitting pre-selection. With Service Pack 19, another feature is released, which I already presented to you in detail in the last feature briefing. I've made a small live demo there. I'm talking about the improved comparison view of textual editors. So specifically for structured text and data unit types and global variable lists. I first announced this under the name three-way merger, but that wasn't technically correct because it's not 3 versions you're comparing, it's just 2 and a third result view where you can also edit. Either way, this is a very useful feature, especially if you work with Subversion or Git. I also announced the new ladder editor to you last time. We had planned to release the preview version last year, but then decided against it and want to release a version 0.9 in the middle of this year. It will contain the essential features in appropriate quality so that you can create real applications with it. Less important features like printing or scriptability of the object will be added in an official 1.0 version in the second half of this year. The old ladder or FBD editor, it is a combination of these two programming languages, will continue to work independently as before. You can port networks from the old editor to the new one, and we recommend the following procedure. You should continue or must continue to use the old editor for FBD because the new ladder editor is a pure ladder editor. For new projects, we recommend the new ladder editor. However, it is not a must to port existing ladder networks to the new editor, especially if you don't actually plan to make any other major changes to these POUs. But if you are rebuilding or re-editing a project, then you should consider it and go to the new ladder. The next few slides are of particular interest to automation platform customers. So customers who are branding CODESYS, brand labeling CODESYS, or adding their own functionality to it. As announced, we have replaced Ceph or Chromium with WebView 2. Before Service Pack 19, CODESYS brought Chromium and used it to display web content. However, Chromium gave us many security vulnerabilities and thus the compulsion to continuously update. Besides, it required relatively many resources, both in the setup and after installation on the hard disk. And so we decided to switch to WebView 2, which is part of the operating system and is updated by Windows. It also requires significantly less resources, at least on our side. If you develop your own CODESYS plugins that used Chromium so far, you need to check them if they work the same way with the new WebView 2, and if they absolutely still need Ceph or Chromium, then you would have to integrate and ship it by yourself. We clearly recommend making the switch to WebView 2. Another important note is that that with Service Pack 19 we have increased our .NET version from version 4.5 to 4.8. Then another announcement: in 2023 we plan to make the deployment server available to automation platform customers as well. The deployment server is the counterpart to the CODESYS installer. The installer connects to the deployment server and downloads setups and packages from it. So far, there is only one deployment server instance hosted and operated by us. However, we would like to give automation platform customers the ability to run their own instance and thus host and deliver their own artifacts and setups. Then, with Service Pack 19, we introduced a log of automation platform commands for debug purposes. You may remember a few minutes ago I told you about the log feature of the installer. You should not confuse the two. This one is about logging the commands from the command manager inside CODESYS. You can turn this feature on by passing this attribute to the command line, and then CODESYS logs into the Windows Event Viewer and allows you to trace the order of the commands. Another announcement: we are working on a sandbox installation. The idea is to be able to save CODESYS installations quickly and easily in order to restore them later or copy them to another PC or pass them on to other users. All settings and included artifacts like libraries and device descriptions are preserved. So this is a great way, for example, to keep a team of users always on the same level, or to make sure that you archive a version exactly and can retrieve it quickly afterwards. Of course, all this can also be achieved via the installer and the project archive too, but here it is a relative high installation effort compared to copying a sandbox. Yes, and finally, the scripting interface. This is being released in a new version, in version 5, so it's a major version jump. And this is because IronPython 3.4 has finally been available since December of last year. We were using IronPython 2.7 until now, and just now we are able to upgrade our scripting interface, and hopefully we will finish it during the next quarter. The old scripting interface version will still be available, so that means if you don't want to go to make this change to new version 3, you can continue to use the old version. So far, that's all the news about the development system.
Yes, and concerning the last topic, the scripting interface, I have the first user poll for you. I would like to know, do you use scripting to automate tasks in CODESYS? Okay, I received the first answers. Thank you very much for participating. Still wait for 5 seconds. Okay, thank you very much for your feedback. Then we'll come to the next topic. I have invited Markus Haberstock. Hi, Markus.
Thank you, Helmar. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you attend this event. In my presentation today, there is only one topic, the offline hub. So let's start. In today's feature briefing, there is only one piece of news from the documentation team, but it will be of great interest to you. It's about the offline hub. I presented you this schedule regarding the offline hub at the feature briefing last fall. With Service Pack 18, we released our new help portal. The setup of Service Pack 18 included an offline hub in ZHM format. The content was based on Service Pack 17. Nothing will change for Service Pack 19, which will be released soon. For Service Pack 20 next year, the plan was to remove the offline hub and to offer only the online hub. So much for the plan. You probably remember the feature briefing last fall. We asked you how important an offline hub is to you. The result surprised us. About 40% of you said that an offline hub is an absolute need for your daily work. This result has prompted us to rethink and finally change our strategy for the offline help. We will now provide an up-to-date offline help again, probably starting with Service Pack 20. We have just started the initial research on the new offline help. The new offline help will no longer be included in the setup, but will be offered as a download. The format will be HTML. However, I cannot give you any further details today. As soon as the details are known, we will inform you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Perfect. And then I would like to introduce my next guest, Bernhard Reiter. Hi, Bernhard.
Hello. Yes, I will give several presentations today, as you have already seen in the agenda, and I will start with the news in the Professional Developer Edition now.
Thank you.
In today's presentation for the Professional Developer Edition, I want to focus on the CODESYS static analysis. We plan a new major release this year, the 5.0, probably in the second half, and it contains a lot of new and exciting features which I want to show here. The first one is the checks in precompile. We already started to implement this feature with the last release, but only for a limited set of rules. Generally, we want to make the round trip time for the user between writing code and getting feedback about this code as short as possible, because the sooner he gets these feedbacks and rule reportings, the likelier he is to actually still rework his code and implement the improvements. And of course, the possible shortest round trip time for him is to get these checks and reportings while he's still editing the code in real time. So the information is then right where you need it, and it also offers a better possibility for quick fixes, because also here it applies with the quick fix probably changes a bit more of the code, and also here the user is more likely to do it immediately when this quick fix is reported while he still works on his code actively. So the target for the 5.0 release this year is to have all rules the Sun offers also be checkable and reportable during editing time. The second new feature I want to talk about is so-called constant propagation. Now this is a rather more theoretical term from computer science, and the user does not necessarily have to know it and understand it, and can still, of course, benefit from the results from it. So what it means in theory is the calculation of possible values of variables and expressions in your code, but not online while the application is running. This is a feature we already have, which is called flow control, but it actually means offline during editing the code and compiling it when it is like not certain which code paths are taken yet. So you cannot determine it with 100% certainty in many cases, but you can get kind of likely statements here. So you can see on the right side here in the picture, for example, a simple code example where a variable I is assigned with one of two possible values, and then a condition with a third value is checked. And here you can see that our static analysis can now determine offline that the value 100 is not possible value for I, because it's just assigned one of the other two values. Here in an internal view, you can see how the static analysis basically like works with the constant propagation. So the two values are assigned here, and now in this condition, it knows that the variable I can only be 17 or 99 or something in between, but never the value 100. And with it, then can report immediately while this power is edited. For the user in the end, this means that he gets improved checks for rules which had a lot of false positives in the past, like division by 0 or possible null pointer access or reference accesses. But also it enables new kinds of checks which were not possible so far. So for example, the compiler could change out of range index accesses to arrays when you used literal values in your code, but it could not do it, of course, for variables. Here now this is possible for design as well, and also it can detect things like constant expressions or constant conditions which do not change depending on the execution path of your code. And so this is all things that help the user to simplify his code, because if you eliminate redundant or constant expressions or conditions and write them in their simplified form in your code, then your code is again easier to understand, maintain, and debug and test. So you get a whole lot of improvements from these new checks here. Also, the static analysis does not only contain rules checking your code, but also it can calculate metrics for your code. So usually this means, code complexity is one of the most used metrics for programming, but of course other metrics are also of interest. Specifically for ISC, for example, how many calls does your Power implement? How complex is an interface? Do I have enough comments in my code? And so on. Now the issue, as you can see here with this list, is that we support a large number of metrics in our static analysis, but not very much of them are used by our users. So we draw a number of conclusions from this. One is that it's simply too many metrics and we need to reduce it. The other one is that we need to really have a clear documentation of purpose for each metric and recommendations when to use them and what benefit the user gets from using these metrics. Also, using the metrics overall needs to be easier, so we need to include them and checking them as part of the regular rules of the static analysis. So now every time, or in the 5.0 version, every time you execute the checks for the rules, also the metrics will be calculated, and violations of lower or upper limits of these metrics will be reported like any other rule of the static analysis. And finally, of course, the same applies here as to the previous slide. So the earlier you get these metrics violations, the more likely you are to fix them. So also this metrics you want to calculate in the precompile in the future. One specific metric and new metric we want to introduce is the so-called cognitive complexity. So right now we have a number of metrics regarding code complexity in the static analysis, but they all have their advantages, but also drawbacks, and it depends a bit on your style of coding, which one to prefer. In our daily work with other high-level languages, we started to know and like the so-called cognitive complexity, which is invented by the SonarSource company. SonarSource implements and develops tools similar to the static analysis for other high-level languages. So, because we liked this new metric, we decided to implement it in CODESYS and for structured text as well. And it will basically replace other rules for code complexity or other metrics for code complexity. And besides just offering metrics and making limits configurable, especially for code complexity, is also very important to make the user transparent how this metric is calculated, what are the parts of this code which contribute most to a bad and high metric, and where he needs really to be careful and improve his code. And so we will create a new view, as you can see here in this slide, where basically this red boxes with the numbers make it visible to the user which part of his code contributes how much to his bad metric. So this will hopefully further grow the acceptance of this metrics, and will allow the users again to create a lot better code than in the past and without the static analysis.
Yes, and concerning the last topic, the software metrics, we have again a question for you. Do you measure software metrics and track software metrics? Going to give you some more seconds. Okay, thank you very much for participating. And then I hand over to Andreas Kehrer.
Hello, everybody. Today I'm the product manager for Runtime System, Safety and Visualization, and today I want to start with the Runtime System.
Thank you.
In today's CODESYS Feature Briefing for the Runtime System, I want to update you on 4 topics. First of all, the news for SP19, the CODESYS control for Weidmuller UOS SL, the independent release cycle for the Runtime Toolkit, and last but not least, our CODESYS Virtual Control SL. Let's start with SP19. We support 2 new platforms, the VxWorks ARM64 architecture and the Linux Dragon Core 64 architecture. New is also that we include the Vbu license support in the Runtime Toolkit, so every device vendor who purchased the Runtime Toolkit is now able to also support the licenses from the CODESYS store on default. I also want to update you or remind you on the Windows CE based products. We moved them to the service phase, so we do not sell new products based on Windows CE, and the maintenance on Windows CE based products is limited. Let's come to the new product, CODESYS Control for Weidmuller UOS SL. UOS is the new operating system from Weidmuller. It's open, flexible, and independent. It's capable for industrial automation as well as industrial IoT, and it's an open platform and can be extended by third-party software, so apps from a store. What did we do? We support this platform with our standard store product, the CODESYS Control Linux SL and the CODESYS Control Linux ARM SL. The new feature-proof architecture is that we did not implement a new runtime system for that platform, but we use our standard one. So it's the standard runtime system which we release on every SL release, and we have an extension package with all the UOS specific extension for the runtime system. The benefit of that architecture is that with every SL release, we automatically have also a release for the UOS platform, so you can always stay on the latest and always up to date with your runtime system. Let's come to the runtime toolkit, the independent release cycle. By now, we always release the runtime toolkit together, the runtime SDK, together with the programming system. So there is no independent release, and this is what we want to change. So we can release runtime SDK independent from the IDE side. And the benefit is that we can do releases for infrastructure or for the infrastructure, meaning the gateway, our SL products like the RTE or the Win control or the Linux-based SL runtimes, but also for the device vendor PLCs, we can release the runtime system independent of the IDE side, so we have less dependencies and the releases can be done faster. So the goal is to be able to release critical bugs within 7 days for the runtime SDK, but also for the gateway and the SL products. Important notes: the runtime toolkit gets a new version schema, so it will be integrated in the add-on version schema, so it will have versions starting with 4. The runtime system packages will come with the associated CODESYS libraries, the so-called syslibs. So they are all together with the runtime system and not with the IDE side anymore. The releases will be, as I said, independent from CODESYS Essential. We will release it every 2 to 3 months. And what's new is that we do the maintenance for the latest version of the runtime system. And we guarantee the backward compatibility. Backward compatibility is not new. This is what we always guarantee. So a running application, a released application runs on newer versions of the runtime the same way than it did on the older ones. Let's come to the new product, Virtual Control SL. Let's have a look at the key points. Virtual Control SL is a, from technical point of view, CODESYS control runtime in a containerized runtime system. We use network licenses instead of local licenses. This is necessary because when you have a virtualized platform, you cannot bind anymore to the hardware because you simply don't know the hardware. We will need a new business model for it. It will be application-based and time-based. So the current business model is based on the hardware. Now we have a virtualized platform. We cannot use the hardware for our business model. So we can base it on the application, like which Fieldbus is used, which CODESYS features are used. The business model will be time-based. Last but not least, the handling and the management of the virtual PLCs will be done within the automation server. Let's have a look to the product and the solution. As I already said, our product is a virtual control in a container, but how could a solution based on that product look like? So we have on the left side a simple one. So embedded devices may have an operating system, typically Linux and Docker engine and runtime system one by one. That's the easiest architecture. And there you would have, or you have benefits when it comes to update and maintenance of the runtime system. Next platform is an IPC-based platform. So you typically could have an hypervisor, which have 2 or more virtual machines. Inside of the virtual machine, you have again a Linux and Docker engine or container engine and runtime system, 1 or more instances of the runtime system. Beside of that, you can have a second and a third virtual machine running the same or a different operating system. The next platform is based on IT hardware. So you have a server system, a virtualization platform, and on that virtualization platform, you can again have virtual machines running Linux or real-time Linux with a container engine running our runtime systems. Again, 1 or more instances of our runtime. Last but not least, the cloud use case. The runtime system is inside of a container, so it could be also run on the cloud. Just to show you the idea what the new solution is capable for. So where are we? We have a container image which have to be self-built. It runs on Docker and Podman. This is what we tested, and we support Ethernet-based Fieldbuses. And currently it is included in the CODESYS Control Linux SL package. In the new online help, there's a quite detailed description how to build and how to run the runtime in a container. What do we want to have for the next milestone? The next milestone is our technology day. We want to have a ready-to-use container image so that you don't have to build it by your own. Tool support CODESYS so that you can handle containers from CODESYS side. The support of the network licenses. Currently, the network licenses are not supported by the runtime system, and it should be available in the store, at least as a test version, as a separate product. This is it from my side. Thank you.
And again, we have a question for you. It's about the containerization. Are you planning to use container technology for new products? 2 simple answers, yes or no. Going to wait 5 seconds more. Okay, thank you very much. And my next guest is Tanja Hafmeier. Hello, Tanja.
Hello, also from my side. And yeah, please enjoy my presentation about the CODESYS Mass Licenser.
Thank you.
Last week, we released our CODESYS Mass Licenser for the first time, and today I would love to introduce it very shortly to you. Our CODESYS Mass Licenser comes as an MSI package that we provide to you via our CODESYS store. And in addition, so that you first get a little bit of feeling for our tool, 3 different licenses, test licenses are available to you free of charge, of course, in any number, with which you can try out the tool first without having to work with your proper licenses that you have purchased. In our online help, it is described very detailed how to use it. And in addition, when we were running the CODESYS Mass Licenser internally, we also have created a small clip, which I would like to show you now. Before you are actually able to start the tool, you first have to set up the configuration file. Here you enter different parameters like password, username, device ID, and some other parameters so that the tool can work properly. After you save the configuration file, the program can be started. From this point on, you only have to watch the tool doing its magic. Everything is done fully automatically, and you can watch how the various controllers within the network are being licensed. In addition, a log file is of course available in the event of an error, and also after the licensing has been done. You can check again in the log file all of the licensed PLCs.
The next presentation about CODESYS Safety is provided by Andreas Kehrer again.
In today's CODESYS Feature Briefing, I want to show you following 4 topics for the CODESYS Safety. One is the CODESYS as qualified tool. The other is CODESYS Safety SIL 2 for mobile automation, CODESYS SIL 2 for factory automation, and last but not least, the CODESYS Virtual Safe Control. Let's get started. So CODESYS as a qualified tool. CODESYS itself is of course by now already a qualified tool for safety, but since we introduced the modularization, the architecture of the programming system changed, so we have to change the way how we qualify a tool. The CODESYS IDE consists of a CODESYS Essentials and a lot of add-ons, and the new approach is to qualify the CODESYS Essentials and each separate add-on. As a result, each add-on and CODESYS Essential is a qualified tool by its release, or in other words, a user can install almost any set of add-ons and the result is still a qualified safety tool. The release for that is planned for summer this year. Let's go to the CODESYS Safety SIL 2 for mobile automation. There we have one major improvement, and this is the J1939 safety protocol stack. We implemented the producer and the consumer side. We have a safe send, safe receive, and unsafe receive. And the configuration itself is not done via configurator at the moment, but via a functional interface of a function block. The release date for the J1939 safety function blocks are planned for SP19. Let's come to the next topic, the Safety SIL 2 for factory automation. Why is this a good idea? The reason why you may come to the idea to use SIL 2 for factory automation is simply that you can program much complexer program logics in a SIL2 application, then you can do it in a SIL3 application. So you can use the ST editor, for example, you can use floating point, you have compiled code instead interpreter code, which is much faster. And last but not least, you can use actually any lockstep CPU to run our runtime system. All in all, you have a powerful solution for factory automation if a SIL2 level is sufficient. So what features do we have in detail? We have a platform support package for the RX TC3, which means that we have done much of the adaptation to the platform of the runtime system already done and pre-certified inside of that platform support package. We have an FSOE master protocol stack, the configurator, and the IO driver. We have some PLC open function blocks, not all, just a subset, but the basics ones. And last but not least, we have the ST editor, floating point, and the safety compound, which enables you to also run a standard runtime system on the safe PLC. For example, to just do some standard application stuff. Release plan for all of these functionalities is SP19, except the FSOE master configurator that will be probably around SP20. Let's come to the new topic of virtual safe control. The idea or the concept is that you can use our pre-certified safety runtime toolkit. You put it into a container, adapt it to Linux, and use the coded processing technology to transform one execution channel of the safe application. So you have one container, two processes in this container running. One is the normal code and one is the transformed code. And by doing so, the diagnostic coverage is high enough to reach SIL3 level. A big benefit is that you can have mixed critical code, so you don't have to qualify all the code. We have safe code, which is transformed, and therefore we have enough diagnostic coverage. And we have standard code, which can run as normal. And there we can put a lot of functionality into standard code, which is not safety critical, and we just have the safety critical stuff inside of this safety related code, which is protected by the coded processing mechanism. The coded processing transformer is a product of the company Silistra Systems, where you can find the link below. The concept for all of this is approved by the DOE suite. Let's have a look at the architecture. We have different hardware. It could be IT servers, could be IPCs, whatever. We have maybe a virtualization layer. It's not mandatory, but it could be. And we have a real-time Linux running a container engine. And there you can have standard containers, standard virtual controls in a container, as well as safe virtual controls in a container. And from IT side, so from the handling of the containers, it's exactly the same. But inside we run a functional application with Fieldbus access via virtual LAN, or we run a safe application, typically using Profinet or FSOE to communicate with the outside world. What are the next milestones in that project? What we do have at the moment is a prototype in a self-built container image. We have tested it on Docker. We are using ProfiSafe version 2.4 and FSOE master, and the concept is approved by the theory suite. Next milestone would be the version for the CODESYS Technology Day. It's a ready-to-use container image, so you don't have to build the container by yourself. The safe runtime system as a standard component of the standard runtime system. So that means that you can add a standard runtime system to, or the safe runtime system to a standard runtime system. and you can use all the infrastructure of a standard runtime system also for the safe runtime system. So the handling and the behavior of the safe runtime system gets more and more the same than a standard runtime system. We want to finish or complete the system FMEA. As a result of that, we will have the requirements which are necessary to run and to maintain a safe PLC, a safe virtual PLC. And of course, by that date, we want to have a version which we can use for alpha testing. What about the schedule? The prototype was available since, or is available since November 2022, with FSOE master, the runtime in a container, and exchange variables. Release date is scheduled for SP20, which is March 2024, with ProfiSafe version 2.6, and yeah, to release at that date. Okay, that's it. If you have questions, please let me know, and thank you for your attention.
Yes, and Andreas has also brought a question for us, or for you. Would you consider a software-based solution for your safety PLC? Again, simple answers, yes or no. Going to wait some more seconds. Okay, thank you very much. The next presentation is about CODESYS SoftMotion, done by myself.
Since the last feature briefing, 2 new versions of CODESYS SoftMotion have been created. The last one, version 4.14, is currently in release. Besides some minor improvements and bug fixes, the following major new functionality has dominated our work. We have added torque management to our robotics. This can be used for 2 things. First, to pre-compute the torque of each axis to pass it as feed forward together with the position and velocity as set values. This can be used to improve the execution quality. Here we speak of torque pilot control. Secondly, to set limits for the torque at the single axis or other neuralgic points of the machine like gearboxes. We call this torque limitation, and it helps to protect the mechanics and is often a more appropriate parameter than speed or acceleration limits on the individual axis. Until now, this was not possible in our system. Our transformations have included only a kinematic model of the mechanics, not a dynamic one. The latter is necessary for the functions just described. However, this is strongly dependent on the mechanics, since masses, moments of inertia, as well as the load have to be known and considered. The dynamic model currently has to be programmed via a specific function block. That means there is no configurator or similar from us for it yet. However, if this is provided by the user or the manufacturer of the mechanics or robot, the torque pre-control and limitation will work completely. How to program this is explained in our online help. You can find it here in the CODESYS SoftMotion section under application examples. There is a dynamic robot model. This is a page explaining with an example how to proceed. Here is a small example. I have a 2-axis Cara robot for which we have created a dynamic model. The second axis is slightly bent and stands at -45 degrees. I now move only the first axis by 90 degrees and we record position, velocity, acceleration, and also the calculated torque, which we could use for pilot control. We see that the first axis develops a torque, here in blue, develops a torque which corresponds to the acceleration profile here, as expected. The second axis in red is interesting. Although it is only holding its position, it has to exert a corresponding counter torque against the inertia. You can also see that in the face of constant velocity, the first axis does not have to apply any torque, therefore it's zero, except for the friction in reality, of course. But the second axis, in order to compensate for the centrifugal force and prevent the arm from folding out, generates a counter torque here and has a certain negative value here. I will now repeat the same movement, limiting the maximum torque of the second axis to 1. You can see that this stretches the overall movement to avoid violating the limits. And the limit or the maximum of the torque of the second axis stays always less than 1. A preview of the next version, probably in summer, we are going to implement path switching points for robotics. You will then be able to place binary switches on the path elements, either using a distance to the start or end point, or as a relative position on it. Alternatively, it will be possible to define a plane, and the switching action occurs when the TCP crosses the plane, that means moves from one side to the other. Apart from this, there will be a dead time compensation to balance the different physical reaction time of the components involved. So the whole thing is very similar to the H switches that we have already in our CNC. Typical application is the switching on and off of a laser or the opening closing of a gripper depending on the path position. Next, and I can't give you a date for this yet, the plan is for us to connect the G-code programming interface of our CNC to the robotics. The CNC allows us to program trajectories very precisely in terms of geometry and trajectory speed. During execution, this path is followed in exactly the same way without regard to the limits of individual axes. Robotics, on the other hand, reliably maintains the dynamic limits of the axis and other constraints. The trajectory is usually given rather roughly by via points. We would like to create a combination of both and preserve the advantages of both approaches. That means the user will be able to program the path with high precision via G-code. It will then be implemented geometrically in this way, but at the same time, the constraints, such as the dynamic limits of the axis, will be respected. So that's all for CODESYS SoftMotion so far.
Next, we are going to have 3 presentations in one block done by Bernhard Reiter about the application, communication, and Fieldbus.
In the application technology, I want to discuss 2 topics. The first one is the simulation interface. This is a new feature for CODESYS, which I already presented and talked about in the previous feature briefings, and I want to give an update on the developments this time. So the main use case is being able to use virtual commissioning in combination with CODESYS projects, and without having to do any kind of extensive changes to these projects, and also to be able to do it in a performant way for the user. We decided to base our simulation interface on OPC UA PubSub and have now a first version, early version or prototype, however you may like to call it, working where the communication exchange based on PubSub is implemented. It works for all I/O variables declared in the project, and an offline export and import of the nodeset file containing the OPC UA PubSub datasets is now possible. So we can create an offline export of this file, and another tool can import this and then start communication with the CODESYS application. We started now evaluation with partners of this early version, specifically because the providers and vendors of simulation tools now need to also integrate specifically Opus UA PubSub into their tools. So we need to get a feeling for how complicated this is for them. Also, we need the possibility and partners who have real-world projects or larger and more complex projects where we can actually now also validate whether the performance requirements, the targets we set for us can be fulfilled based on the communication technology we chose. So evaluation is now ongoing, and we will continue to work on this topic and hope to be able to release a first version in the second half of the year. The second topic I want to talk about are the so-called application support packages or the application libraries itself. Currently, many libraries, like for example networking libraries like net-based services or the string builder libraries we released the first time with Service Pack 18 last year, are all still of the so-called essentials set up in CODESYS. So basically any kinds of improvements or bug fixes we do for these packages currently need to be released always together with a CODESYS service pack or a CODESYS patch. Here we want to get more agile and be able to release updates and bug fixes faster to our customers, independently from the CODESYS Essentials release cycle. So we will now start to create new add-ons for these application libraries, which will be grouped by topics like, for example, a strings add-on with string builder library and also string conversions and other libraries and utilities helpful in this area. Also, another add-on might be the application support add-on, which then contains like more backend add-ons like element collections and the common behavior model. The big advantage of using now add-ons for this topic is that it's possible to configure dependencies explicitly for this new library add-ons. So they can now state they depend, for example, on a certain compiler version to use new features or on other library add-ons which they need as a backend for them to work correctly. So the strings add-on, for example, might require that the application support add-on is always installed. And this also allows other add-ons to now state explicit dependencies and versions for this new library add-ons we create. So the IoT libraries add-on might require a certain version of the string builder add-on, for example, and similarly for other add-ons. And also the other important part is that now this also enables the support of the project inspection and the installer for this library add-ons as well. So now is even easier for the user to say, okay, I have this certain project configured with not only a certain versions of add-ons like a CFC or visualization, but it also requires a certain set of libraries which needs to be installed to be able to log in or download this project without any online changes. So these are big improvements, and takes the whole concept of the CODESYS modularization to the next logical step. And we plan to release the first add-on, the strings add-on, in the second quarter of this year. So for the topic of the communication features in CODESYS, I want to discuss 3 fields today. The first one is Opus UA. Here we did a lot of work on supporting or complete support of the micro embedded device profile and also attempted a certification for this feature. So we completed the implementation of all features required for the profile, and we went to a certification lab during the end of the last year. Technically, we did pass certification regarding the correct implementation of the features, but sadly we could not pass the certification due to issues with default security settings in CODESYS. We decided that we will, for now or the time being, not change this security settings because it would mean to change the default settings for new runtimes, and specifically this relates to the security settings for encrypted communication. We were required to enable those by default, and this would have meant that as soon as you update to a new runtime version and continue to use your existing application, new or existing UA clients would not have been able anymore to connect to the runtime without manual intervention from the user, which would have required to update the clients and enable encrypted communication with our runtime. So we decided this is too big of an incompatibility and breaking change, and we will not enable this by default for now. But we will keep an eye on this topic for the future, and also as soon as things like automatic certificate management are better supported, for example, we will regard this topic again and decide whether a change can be made. But the good news for our customers is that it still means that they can get certified. So as I mentioned, technically all features are implemented correctly, and it only requires from our customers with their own devices that they change the security default settings we could not change generally for all our customers. But depending on their specific requirements, this might be okay for them to do, and they might not have any kind of compatibility issues with that, and so they can then get certified for the micro-embedded device profile. It requires the runtime version 3.5 SP19 and will require the latest communication add-on version 4.3. Both these features are yet to be released as of time where this feature presentation is held now. The second topic I want to talk about is BugNet. Here also we are working on a major update of our BugNet stack. It will support the protocol revision 24. Right now it still supports version 17. So as this is quite a big update, it will get the new add-on version 2.0, and it will require the runtime core version of also 3.5 SP19, as the BugNet stack is also part of the runtime. Protocol revision 15 will still be supported as well by the new add-on, so existing projects do not have to be updated when updating the add-on. But there are incompatible changes in this new revision, so it is not only not required to not update existing projects, but it's actually pretty cumbersome and we do not recommend it. But what we do recommend is to use or develop new applications already with this new protocol revision and not use the old one anymore. So the BugNet add-on will contain new library and device versions also in version 2.0, which then should be used for the new projects. Using this protocol revision is required if you attempt a certification of new devices from 2024 onwards. Currently, we plan to release this new version 2.0 from BugNet in the mid of 2023. The last topic I want to talk about is DNP3. This is a protocol stack specifically used in the energy automation market. Mostly North America, in Europe and Asia, other protocols are used for this topic. But in the North American market, demand is pretty strong for this protocol currently, so we started development on it. But it will also be based on a third-party stack from Triangle Microworks, where we are sure that the stack itself is completely working. And we will mostly work on a good integration of this protocol stack in CODESYS and to create an IEC library with a good and usable API for this. The API will be similar to what you already know from the Modbus standalone stack and also, for example, OPC UA PubSub. We will support master and outstation as features from the start. What will not be available immediately is a configurator like you know it from other Fieldbuses. So initially an IEC library only, and configurators and editors might then be added in later releases. The release of the initial version is also planned for the mid of this year, and it will require the latest Linux SL runtime version available at that time. I will split the presentation for the Fieldbuses into two parts. In the first part, I will talk about general improvements which benefits all Fieldbuses, and in the second part, I will talk about specific new features for the Profinet and Ethernet IP stacks. Last year with Service Pack 18 already, we introduced the so-called feature symbolic access for IOs. This means that you do not have to use the variable mapping table in the Fieldbus editors, but instead you can access the IO variables in an object-oriented way by using the device names configured in the tree. A new feature now supported with SP19 will be the possibility to use cross-reference features like go to definition for these variables, and you are then directly sent to the corresponding device and device editor, which this certain IO you use the command on belongs to. So now a useful usability improvement here. We also did performance improvements which will make certain users happy, which suffered a lot from these described conditions here. So mostly if you had device configurations which contained a large number of IOs, switching between the editors, for example, was a very slow operation, and yeah, we had projects where it could take up to like 1 minute of waiting time, and the complete IDE was blocked. And also saving and opening this project took a very long time. So yeah, 10 seconds, like I mentioned here, some projects even maybe a minute. We improved these cases generally, so saving projects, switching between editors, now is an operation which takes like specific to this device, saving only 1 second. So when saving the project, it gets faster, and switching between device editors with lots of IOs is now a very fast operation, taking like 1 second, or looks more or less instantaneous for the user. And the last thing we did here, another usability improvement, is that we improved the display of the unused IO channels in device editors. So when certain IO variables were not mapped or not used in the application, they were, the current value was displayed in a very light gray font color and said not updated. And it was very difficult to spot this, to see this, especially the gray was not very well, and people did not understand why their IOs were not updated, and did not understand the output here in the editor. So we tried to improve this by, first of all, using a more visible color, and also adding a tooltip for this current value column, which now details or explains in more detail why this IO variable is not updated here. Next, I will talk about Profinet. So we released in December a new version 4.3, which contains the controller system redundancy S2 support, and also supports now the media redundancy protocol. We will continue to work on the redundancy features for the Profinet add-on, and for this year it is planned to further work on the redundancy R2 support for the controller, and also to start working on device redundancy features. What exactly will be ready by end of the year or is done is hard to say as of right now, but we will keep you updated during the year on the progress of these features. Evenit IP also had a new version released, version 4.4 in December as well. The main new feature was the support for the version 19 of the conformance test and the individual reconfiguration of remote slaves being supported. The big feature or the big update plan for this year is the support of the version 20 of the conformance test. So every year a new conformance test version is released, and of course we always check which new features and requirements this conformance test brings this version, and then check whether we already support it out of the box maybe, or how much effort and new features is required to support this. And yeah, depending on that, we will then try to include all necessary features this year to support this new conformance test version then as well. So thanks for your attention.
The next presentation is about the CODESYS automation server. Martin Decker, unfortunately, is not present today, so he cannot say hello in person. But fortunately, we have his presentation recorded. Let's see what he has prepared for us.
In addition to the two pillars, runtime and engineering, the CODESYS automation server is the third important pillar in the CODESYS portfolio for several years now. The automation server, the platform for the administration of controller landscapes, machines and plans, and associated CODESYS projects and application. In this context, the automation server not only supports administrative tasks, but also provides support for engineering tasks, for displaying, recording, and analyzing data, and it also covers a wide range of security aspects. Today you're going to learn something about the latest developments in the automation server since the last CODESYS feature briefing in fall last year, and you're going to learn something about future developments and how you can benefit from these features in the automation server. The latest release of the CODESYS automation server brought the application update scheduler. The requirement for this was that it should be possible to update PLCs, update applications outside working hours, and also to do automatic application updates in case there are any new versions available of an application. And it should also be possible to do some kind of a rollback in case of any misbehavior during the update. The solution was we implemented a scheduling tool where users can define application updates, and the benefit is clear. You always have full control over your application updates now, and there's no necessity to do any overtime, and you have regular working hours again. In the web app, it looks like this. By clicking this Add Schedule button, a window pops open. You can specify a name of this new schedule, a description, and then you can specify an update date and time when you want to perform the update. In the future, you can select if you want to do a rollback on only those PLCs where an update failed, or on all PLCs, so all will have the same versions running on them afterwards. You set the status. Is it active, your schedule? Is it just a draft, or do you want to disable it? And here on the right hand part, you specify a project and a commit, so a version and the application you want to deploy on those PLCs. Down here you can select PLCs that match the application, so only PLCs on which this application can run are actually displayed here. Simply check it, hit the save button here, and then you have a new schedule. If you do not select a date and a time here, but check the trigger on commit checkbox, every time a new version of the application selected here is available on the automation server, this new version will automatically be downloaded to those PLCs you selected down here. So that means as soon as you upload a new version, this version is automatically rolled out on all PLCs you selected. The schedule view gives you an overview of all schedules, so either schedules that are still a draft, schedules that are active, or even schedules that are currently executing. And of course, also if a schedule is completed, it's displayed in that list here. And apart from that, there's a log for every schedule. You can select the PLC within that schedule and see, for example, when a deployment of an application started and when it was successful. So you can always keep track of all the changes that were made by the schedule. Another requirement was that it should be possible to set a new password in case it was lost or forgotten. For this, we created content for the CODESYS online help. So your benefit is now that you can regain access to your own account pretty fast. There are different cases in the online help, and there's a step-by-step instruction explaining how you can set up a new password. If you're on the login screen, for example, simply hit that link forgot password. The CODESYS online help opens and you have several entries there in case, for example, you want to reset your password and you're an administrator, or you want to set a new password and are a normal user. Another wish was that it should be easier to understand features of the automation server, understand functions of the automation server, understand the web app better. And for this purpose, we added content on different places in the web app. Your benefit is that you now have guided help and useful hints with detailed descriptions, which makes it easier to understand features and get maximum benefit from them. One example here, within the permissions dialog of a PLC, if you hit that question mark sign here, a tooltip opens explaining that by using this dialog here, you can alter the permissions of a user. And if you click on that question mark icon, the CODESYS online help opens, describing how you can grant or revoke permission for users. In case you miss any explanations within the automation server, just get in touch with us. If you have any suggestions and wishes, feel free. We're happy to get your input and to improve the CODESYS automation server for you. A new feature that is not yet released but will come with the next version end of March is that updates will be highlighted, will be better visible, and it will also be easier to distinguish between different applications within the automation server. The requirement for this was that there should be prominently visible information about any available application updates, and selected application versions should clearly be distinguishable. The solution we implemented is that we added some additional columns in the list view, also added an update indicator icon on several parts on the automation server, and we reordered the columns in the deployment view. Your benefit is that you always have information about the current version and available updates for your application at one glance. In the list view of the automation server, here in the tile representation, this blue icon here gives you the information that for the application, called application in this case, an update is available. Again, here in the list view, now in the tabular representation, those are the columns we added. They can be manually configured here, so you can configure if you want to display them or if you want to hide them. The first column informs you about available updates. The other columns tell you which application is running on your PLC, which commit, which version of the application is running, and to which project the application actually belongs. In the detail view of a PLC, we also added that icon, so you can always see when an update is available for an application that's running on that PLC, or if there's no update available. In the deployment details of an application, we also added some additional icons which make it clearer which application is running on a device. For example, if you select an application or a commit of an application here, this equal sign indicates that the application that currently runs on the PLC is the same as the selected one, whereas this icon indicates that the application that runs on the device is not the same as the one you selected. We also separated the search fields from the column headings, which makes it easier now to search for certain PLCs, for example, or for certain commits, and gives you a better overview of the contents here of this table. Users of the CODESYS automation server come from different countries, and it should be possible to specify in which language notifications those users receive are. So, for example, confirmation emails or any emails they receive for resetting their password. The solution we implemented is that administrators can now define an initial language for users, which simply makes sure that those users always get the messages in a language they understand. If an administrator sets up a new user, in addition to the fields that already existed, there's a field now giving the administrator the possibility to set an initial language. In this case, German is selected. One thing that regularly caused confusion and was perceived as supposed failure was the fact that under certain conditions, it is not possible to access a PLC with a CODESYS development system if the automation server is also connected to the PLC. To improve that situation, we added notifications now in the CODESYS development system, which makes users aware of this supposed misbehavior and avoids some troubleshooting for the users. In the CODESYS development system, if a PLC is connected to a gateway, in this case a local gateway, the CODESYS development system automatically detects if there's another connection to this PLC, and the automation server, if that's the case, a message is displayed here informing the user that an automation server is connected to the device and that local changes may be overwritten, which then explains the behavior a user will see if he tries to locally access this PLC whilst it is connected to the automation server. Let's have a short look at the roadmap now in the end. Besides the features that are already part of the automation server, there will be some big developments in the future. For example, the on-premises automation server. Currently, the CODESYS automation server is cloud-based only. Some of you have seen it already on the SPS Trade Fair show in Nuremberg last fall. The on-premises automation server. This will come in the future, which means it will be possible to have a CODESYS automation server running on your own hardware, on your own infrastructure. Along with that, we will implement LDAP support, which makes it possible to connect user management system to the automation server, giving your IT, for example, the opportunity to administer all users for an automation server. We will also create synergies with our CODESYS virtual control. It will, for example, be possible to instantiate, to create new virtual controls, to update virtual controls, to back up virtual controls with the automation server. We will also add a deployment log to the CODESYS automation server, giving you the possibility to tell when something was changed, who changed it, when was it changed, what was changed, and also why was it changed, if there are any comments for the change. We will add some new features to the topology view, for example, the possibility to use map services like Google Maps or OpenStreetMap, and also to display the status of PLCs and variable values from PLCs. We will simplify their certificate handling for CODESYS PLCs, though this will be a central part of the automation server, giving you an overview of all available certificates on your PLCs that are connected to the automation server. And we will also enhance the licensing options of the automation server, and some more features will of course also come, but those are the most important ones that will come in the near future. enjoy the new features.
And Martin Decker has prepared another question for you about the preferred architecture of the CODESYS automation server. This is a little bit more complex, this question. I'm going to give you more time to decide for one variant. Five seconds. Thank you very much. And now we come to the last presentation of today. It's about the CODESYS Visualization and done by Andreas Kehrer. Here we go.
In the CODESYS Feature Briefing, I want to update you for the CODESYS Visualization for the last 3 versions. This is SP19, version 4.3 and 4.4 of the visualization. Then come to the version SP19. There we have a discontinuation of the Visual Element Toolkit, which we discontinue with CODESYS version 3.5 SP19. The reason is because there are better alternatives which we propose to use. This is the frame interface and HTML5 elements. Let's go to the version 4.3 of the visualization, which is already released. There we have the customized dialogues. You can use new placeholders, especially in rectangles, to use placeholders. And we have buttons with bitmap infos, so you can use bitmaps also on buttons in a customized dialog. A new feature is the file transfer dialog. You can configure it so that there is no additional dialog, so you can override message, or an override message is shown instead of a standard browse dialog. So for example, you can use it like you can see it here, and you don't have to use the standard dialog here. Let's come to the HTML5 support, or the HTML5 control support. One important thing is the signing with certificates. We support signing with the certification authority or certificate authority, a signed certificate, self-signed certificate, and we used timestamped, or we allow timestamped certificates for the HTML5 elements. HTML5 elements can be signed by the IDE or by the GUI or via scripting. And if you're using an element which is not signed, CODESYS will generate a warning, because signing is very important for security reasons. And we really recommend to use only signed HTML5 elements inside of your CODESYS visualization. There's even more support, so we have now the possibility to put HTML5 elements into project archives. This is a common and easy way to distribute your HTML5 elements throughout different CODESYS installations. Let's come to the new version 4.4. There I want to show you the new features which we plan. One are the snap lines. There we have a short video for you. So you can see 3 rectangles, and if you want to place, or if I want to place one of those rectangles in the same line or in the same row than the others, there are the snap lines which help me to place the elements. Yeah, then we have the HTML5 offline view. So by default, in the CODESYS visualization editor, you have always an offline view of an element. At the moment, we don't have that view for HTML5 elements, and this we will change with the version 4.4. So you have an offline view, and here's a short list of features which we support. I don't want to go through all the functionalities one by one. I just want to show how many they are. The idea is to support all the functions that you are used to with other elements, also for the HTML5 elements. So the HTML5 element will behave in the CODESYS Visualization editor the same way than any other visualization element. That is the basic idea. Release planned for May 2023. Let's come to the next feature. It's the swiping. So you're used to that feature from your mobile phone when you swipe through the applications or the views. Exactly the same should be available also for the CODESYS Visualization. And we have a short preview. To be honest, the visualization is maybe not that interesting, but the idea is, as you can see, that you can move the views or the frames in that case by the mouse pointer, and just change the view of that frame. Yeah, it's also a feature which we will implement and release for the version 4.4, which is planned for May 2023, the swiping. Okay, that's it for the visualization. Thank you for your attention.
And also Andreas has a last question for you. It's about the leverage of HTML5 controls. Are you planning to use them? Okay, thank you very much. I announced in the beginning that we are going to present you the results of these user polls. Let's start directly with the last one, the one that you have just answered. We see a majority of you plan to use these HTML5 controls. Then I'm going to go back to the first question. It was about the scripting and automating CODESYS. There you gave the following answers. Only 1/5 roughly, or 1/6 of you are using it regularly. More are interested. And for some it's not, don't have a need for it. Next question was about the software metrics. Only a small part of you are already using it. Hopefully this will increase. Next, we have the question of the container technology for the runtime. So it's quite half-half. And next question was about the soft safety, if you consider to use it when it's available. Majority says yes. And the last question was about the CODESYS automation server and the preferred architecture. Majority is for the hybrid cloud. I'm not going to interpret the results. It's just the rough, the raw values. Thank you for participating in these polls. Yeah, and I announced also a question and answer part, but we were able to answer all your questions in the chat during the presentation, so there are no open questions right now. Anyhow, we are appreciating any feedback you give us, also for the event in general. And I would like to draw your attention to the next event, which is on site here in Kempten, a face-to-face event. It's the CODESYS Technology Day. You find it when you go to our homepage. It's here on the first page, and there are still seats available. Please register soon. I know that for some of you it's hard to participate if you are located far away, but for those who have the chance, it's really a must for those, and we would be happy to welcome you here in Kempten. That's all for today. We will do the next feature briefing in October. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention, and see you next time.